Live then to the Chancellor Rishi Sunak, who's live on Times Radio Breakfast. Morning, Chancellor.
Good morning.
And the Governor of the Bank of England there saying there are some very hard yards to come, and this could be the worst recession since the aftermath of World War One. How bad are you expecting it to be? How hard will the years be to come?
Well, I think the first thing to say, which I think the governor alluded to as well, is that we're living at a time of unprecedented economic uncertainty. So I think we all need to have some humility about our ability to predict precisely exactly what's going to happen to the economy. That said, I agree and have said previously, there is hardship to come. You're absolutely right about that. In spite of the unprecedented support that we've put in place to protect people's jobs and incomes and help businesses, we can't save every single job and save every single business. But in spite of that hardship, my view is that people should not be left without hope. And that's why earlier in July I outlined our plan for jobs. And that is why I'm in Scotland today to see that plan for jobs in action. And we want to protect, support and create jobs best we can across the UK and give people that hope. Better opportunity.
And of course, most of people can enjoy that kind of thing because we are emerging from lockdown in most of the UK. Of course, though, there are lots of parts of the UK which are going back into restrictions, into local lockdowns. Are you looking at the idea of local financial help for areas which are on local lockdown, such as extending the furlough scheme for people in Greater Manchester?
Well, we've already put unprecedented support in place. When it comes to the furlough scheme in general, maybe take a step back because it's been, incredibly difficult decision. From start to finish, the government will have been helping to pay people's wages for 8 months, which is just in and of itself, I think, a very long time. And most reasonable people will look at that and say, look, that's not obviously something that can carry on indefinitely. And so in common with other countries around the world, their versions of these are all coming to an end towards the end of the year. But there is still support there for companies that can successfully bring furloughed employees back to work, productively employ them through to January. They will receive a retention bonus of £1,000 per employee. That will make an enormous difference, especially to those small and medium-sized companies who are the vast majority of people who use the furlough scheme. But it's also not right to keep people trapped in a situation where if there isn't a realistic prospect of them returning to the job they had, that is simply not going to be possible for absolutely everybody. And in those situations, it wouldn't be fair to do that. And what's better is to look forward and provide people with new opportunities.
But what about away from the furlough scheme? With people in East Lancashire where there are restrictions added on that, will there be other help extended? Will statutory sick pay for those who need to shield, will that be extended?
Yes.
Business
So
rate relief?
You're right about statutory sick pay. And what we did actually right at the beginning of this crisis, and I did it in the budget that I did shortly after taking office in early March, was we changed how statutory sick pay and all our other support works to include people who are isolating and make sure that it was payable from day one, to change how the interaction, especially for those who are self-employed, how that works, with their eligibility to their versions of those things as well, to make sure that the system worked for people and so that they do have support if they have to isolate. So that was put in place right at the beginning of this crisis. Both the accessibility of that support and also the generosity of it were increased as well. So that's already in place.
In terms of the hardship to come, what cuts in public spending can we expect? What, as a British public, should we prepare ourselves for? What part of government will we expect to see less of?
No, I mean, we've just started the process of talking to departments about their spending plans for the next few years, something called a spending review process, which will conclude in the autumn. And what we've said is, in all cases, there won't be a return to austerity. Public spending will continue to grow in real terms. So people should have that, and they should know that. We will continue to invest in our public services. They will continue. The money going into public services will go up; it won't go down. But our public finances have taken a significant hit alongside the economic shock that we're currently experiencing, and that will mean that we need to make some difficult decisions going forward. It's going to mean we really need to focus on our priorities. Yeah. We need to look at public finances. And I think most people will say, look, this year, it's fine to act in the way you have. We're facing a crisis. The appropriate thing is to be bold and decisive in the response and try and protect as much of the economic capacity we have as possible. We can borrow this year to do that. That's not something we can or should sustain. That's not the economically responsible thing to do. So over the next few years, we will need to return our public finances to a position of sustainability, and that will require some difficult decisions, which obviously I will and am prepared to make at the appropriate time.
I want to ask you about the case of a sitting Conservative MP, former minister, who was arrested on suspicion of rape, sexual assault and coercive control. I assume you know who it is, even though the rest of us don't.
It's really not for me to comment on these matters. Obviously,
no, but I just want. But what I want to ask about that is
the police are involved, and it's right that they there's right that they conduct their investigation, and it wouldn't be appropriate for me to comment.
But there's a question of safeguarding, isn't there? And I wonder, have you spoken to? I imagine that there are women working in your office in Parliament. Many people, many charities have said that having a person like this under investigation for something like that is a safeguarding issue. Have you warned women working in your staff, in your office in Parliament, who the person is?
No, I said I'm very confident about my own team, but I would say I can't comment any further on this particular case. That there is a police investigation that is ongoing, and it is right that is completed as you would expect.
But generally, do you think women working in Parliament should know if there's someone who's been arrested on suspicion of raping someone to the extent that they needed hospitalisation?
I think that the matters for the police are matters for the police, and we have a legal process and due process that should carry on as it normally would, and those rules are being followed. And there's really nothing further that I can say.
Just finally, on the issue of lockdown, Michelle Obama has been speaking on her podcast about the effect that the pandemic has had on her, what the effect of seeing all the instances of racism in the US has had on her. I wonder, throughout this pandemic, she said it's led to her to having mild depression. I wonder how you've coped through all of this.
I generally find some of the things she says very powerful and engaging, and I think she's right to highlight the health impacts of lockdown. I'm not entirely sure exactly, because I haven't read her specific comments on this, what led to it, but I think many people have been grappling with the health impacts of lockdown. We focus on the obvious one, which is coronavirus and how many people are being infected every day. But as the Chief Medical Officer has said, that there are lots of other health impacts of lockdown as well that we perhaps haven't spoken about as much, whether it's people who aren't seeking the treatment that they need, or indeed, as you've highlighted, and as she has, people who are suffering mental health issues from the isolation and the uncertainty of the current situation. So I think when we think about lockdown and when we think about how to respond to this virus, we should have all of those health impacts in our mind, as well as the economic impacts. And obviously, poor economic outcomes also lead to poorer health outcomes in the long term as well. So it's right to look at it all in the round. In terms of me, I mean, I've largely just been working night and day, so I haven't had much time, to be honest, but I'm slowly getting back to normal. I mean, I'm someone who normally goes to the gym a few times a week, and that sadly has been missing from my life for the last few months, as well as not seeing my family really at all. But that is slowly changing, so I am slowly trying to get my gym routine back and spend a bit more time with my kids, which is good and helpful for me, because can't sustain this forever.
Well,
but we've got important jobs to do.
Just on that point of working night and day, seeing you on the telly doing the rounds this morning, I hope you don't take offence to this, but you look pretty tired. Has this dampened your desire to be Britain's next Prime Minister?
I definitely won't take offence at it. So I didn't miss the end of your question, Ray. Has it dampened my...
You must be exhausted. Has it dampened your desire to be the Prime Minister?
Oh gosh, I definitely don't have that desire. So,
really?
Didn't need to dampen anything. But I am tired. I think that's fair. It has been. Look, it's not just me. Lots of people, not just in government, but up and down the country in all their different ways, have been working round the clock, right, with people who are on the front line through to the Prime Minister himself, right? We're all dealing with something we haven't had to deal with before. It's hit us at extraordinary speed and severity, and everyone in their different ways is trying to do the best they can. And that often requires just working very hard, and it's stressful because it's very uncertain, and the decisions you make have wide-ranging impact, and that weighs heavily on you. But you just try and give it everything you can. But I'm sorry, I'm looking tired, so I will take that as an instruction to try and revitalise myself over the coming weekend to be a bit more bright and bushy-eyed next week.
Thank you very much for your time this morning, Chancellor Rishi Sunak.